Imperial music, me just saying Imperial music so we don't get a copyright strike. The Star Wars Power of the Force collection. Darth Vader leads an evil empire towards universal domination. Join the brave rebellion with Luke Skywalker, Han Solo and Chewbacca, and Jedi Obi-Wan Kenobi. Can you stop the Empire? Star Wars Power of the Force collection from Kenner.
Hey, everybody, welcome to another glorious episode of Nerd with Dre Alvarez and Jeff May. I'm not Dre Alvarez. That's pretty clear. I'm Jeff May. So who are you?
I still don't know who I am, Jeff, because we don't normally do guests, but someone else is in the room. So am I Dre or is someone else Dre? Is this a clone situation?
If we are getting attacked by a clone of Dre, that would be not be the worst, if I'm being honest. We could use another one of you, but instead we get a one of one limited edition Star Wars author, expert, literal pundit, a guy who I fought casually, politely with about Star Wars recently on Jeff Has Cool Friends. One of my favorite people on the planet and one of my favorite neighbors, Ken Napzok. Ken, how you doing, bud?
I can't remember what we were debating, but you were wrong. That was the fun point. It was just you were wrong. Glad to be here. Dre, pleasure to be here with you. I forgot about Dre.
It was how I think Andor is the best Star Wars. And you were like, how dare you?
Let's give some background to people. We're doing our toy reboot season 7 of Nerd, because we do trilogies. We copy another popular model that does trilogies. Wonder where I got that from. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So we do that. Last month, G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. This month, 1995, not the earlier versions, the 1995 Star Wars Power of the Force.
Colloquially referred to as Power of the Force 2 among the collecting world. It makes it a lot easier to, instead of saying Power of the Force, parentheses 1995, we just say Power of the Force 2.
Not Power of the Force Strike Back.
Attack of the Powers of the Force.
So Jeff, though, does a ton of podcasts, as do you, Ken. But Jeff has hyped up a few fights on other podcasts that he's done with Yui Sang, with Kim Crawl and Ugg Fine. And Jeff, I love you. I'm not going to lie. These hypes were like built up. And then it was very Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas, like just didn't live up to the hype.
Are you saying Ken knocked me out when I told him that Andor was the best?
I actually messed up my boxing metaphor, but yeah, let's stick with that. Because I meant to say an under fight as opposed to an upset, but sure, Ken
it was a polite disagreement. And that's the best. That's the best kind of disagreement.
I also don't disagree that it's like the best put together of the Star Wars shows. It's just I feel it swings and misses in terms of some of the pulp of Star Wars, but it's a wonderful, beautiful series. And we had this argument in person over pizza too, and it's wonderful.
You're allowed to be wrong. And I think that's fair.
Okay.
I liked it so much that I collect Fiona Shaw autographs.
Well, that's the answer.
That really is. I got 2 of them in the mail.
That's another thing. I'll throw that out to both of you. The Venn diagram of you and Ken, Jeff, is just so wonderful. So you both do pack breaking. You kind of independently got into it on your own. You both like Star Wars. You both like diner food. That's great on them. So this is a lot of
Ken get stuff in the mail from John Jabs of The Past is Alive.
Yeah.
So it's crazy how connected my recent Cool Friends guests go. Now, Ken, for those of you that did not listen to the episode of Jeff Has Cool Friends, first off, what the hell is wrong with you? Second off, go back and look at that. Third off, Ken has been a guest of Jeff Has Cool Friends, as well as the previous show that I did, the previous version of Jeff Has Cool Friends for the giant corporation that makes Star Wars statues. Ken also host of Force Center. He hosts regular things on the Napzok network, including live chats on YouTube, sort of like a radio show, which is really fun. He does sports card ASMR on YouTube, which recently got a big plug from John Jabs on one of his things. I heard him talking about it like really well and saying your name.
Sorry to sell you out, Jeff. So Jeff did a surprise May the 4th Star Wars break and did it at different hours. He didn't want to wake up his roommate. So he kind of had this nice, calm, really low voice.
Oh, yeah.
And the entire chat was like, you coming after Ken's ASMR? And he did a good job, Ken. I just got to say, Jeff does good. So maybe he could be a guest on ASMR Card.
But also important to note, and this is, I think, one of the main reasons, aside from many of the reasons, but Ken, you are the author of the book, Why We Love Star Wars.
Yes. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for all the plugs and the nice words. And yeah, John helped. I got a few subscribers that day. I appreciate that. Yeah, I wrote Why We Love Star Wars, came out in 2019. So it's fascinating because it summarizes for the first few years of Disney Star Wars and Star Wars going back to 77, and then a lot of things came out after the book. But yeah, check it out. Yeah,
Does that
thank
mean
you.
we're gonna get like a re-release within a like a
No, no, no. That has more to do not my lack of desire, just more to do with the publisher, the business side of it, and as it turns out, unless you're Stephen King, yeah, I don't think you can buy a lot of groceries on your books.
Let me throw two things out of why we love Star Wars. So,
Mm,
great book. I picked up a copy and skimmed it recently. Very much like Jeff. Jeff threw this out. You go deep. You go comics. You go
mm,
side. You do everything. So there were a couple of them like that looks interesting. I haven't read that. Maybe I want to. I
mm.
haven't like, caught up on the Clone Wars, for instance, like the
Oh
the
yeah.
not the movie, but yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm like, oh, I don't want to read this. Don't spoil it. I'm like, what are you doing? Don't
Mhm.
spoil. And then at the beginning, you're even like, sorry about spoiler from
Yeah,
future. But I
yeah.
have two comments I have on that book. So one, I want to give a huge shout out to entry number 65, which is to my boy Wicket W. Warwick in
Yeah.
the Jedi. I would have been shocked if you would have gone for a moment from either of the Ewok movies, one of which we did cover on this show.
Mm, mm.
Jeff loved it. Jeff had never seen Ewok: The Battle for Endor, and I mean it
Oh, yeah.
holds. Jeff was like Wilford Brimley doing action stuff. This movie is great. Obviously, I'm
Yes.
being sarcastic.
I will say though that my theory that
Mm,
Wilford Brimley's character was a Republic commando that went into hiding after the Clone
mm.
Wars is
I
canon.
can I can get I
If
I
you
can
look
get
at
behind
if
that.
you compare age
Mhm.
and you compare skills and talents and things like that, it's very clear that he
I
was.
like that. I like that. That could be it now.
One of the
Yeah,
most
that could be
watched
canon.
on this channel. So yeah, if you haven't checked that out, Ken, you could. I did see you hop on or someone hopped on to say, hey, the last episode of Jeff Has Cool Friends was a good guest. I saw someone
Sports card ASMR.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
last one. So and I'll throw this out. Did want to ask because that did come out after the Mandalorian, which you very explicitly said in
Yeah,
the pre.
yeah.
Jeff mentioned on your episode 12 of Sideshow. Sorry, Jeff, I'm going to list it. It
you
was
can say
such a
the name of this. Yeah, it's fine.
and you actually discussed like great moments. You discussed the book, but interestingly, Jeff said he's a huge fan of IG-88. So sorry to
Mm.
put you on the spot here. Said we're not going to get a re-release, so this will be a nerd exclusive.
Mm.
Any of the IG-88 fight scenes in The Mandalorian, some of those were just
There are
awesome.
no IG-88 fight scenes in The Mandalorian.
What do you mean? Or who is the
There
robot?
are
Is it
plenty of IG-11 fight
IG-11.
scenes,
Evan?
but
All
there are
right.
0 IG-88
All right,
scenes.
falling on my face. Okay, but they look the same.
Yeah.
All
It's
the
fine. It's fine, Dre.
they're the
You can
same.
be a casual. It's fine.
They're the same.
would any of those IG not 88 but 11 fights in the Mandalorian?
Yeah.
Any of those moments make like if you did
Mhm.
up 25 new entries.
Yeah, absolutely. I think his sacrifice at the end of season one is pretty powerful and comes from where he starts. I think what season one of Mandalorian is about is the rewiring of our hardwiring, and it's the change. The key scene, actually, I probably would even write about more is Quill, the Ugnaught, when he explains slowly, methodically how he found salvage IG-11 and rebuilt him. That is the core of the season. That is the entire season's theme right there of how we all could be reprogrammed. We can hardwire, we can change, we can grow. And Mandalorian's on that journey, and so I think it all it hinges on that scene, and then his sacrifice at the end. So I'd write that. And then I love later on in season three when Grogu gets
Oh,
put in.
I haven't seen season 3 yet, so
Oh,
whatever you say, I'm
well,
gonna be.
there's a tiny.
It's on me.
just-
It's on
yeah,
me for not having seen it yet.
there you go. It's out there. You can watch Andor again. But anyways, there's that comedy moment of Grogu. Yes, yes, yes. No, no. I think I'd put that in there too.
So that is a Buster Douglas knockout there, Jeff. Anyway, continue.
I would like to watch Andor again. That's not an insult to me. Like,
No, I watch all these again.
yeah. So we're talking about 1995's Power of the Force re-release because this is our season where we're talking about action figure sequel lines, right? So we did a
Mhm.
Real American Hero. Now we're doing Power of the Force 2, and then next we're doing Masters of the Universe 2000X, right? So
Mm.
looking at Power of the Force is very interesting because Star Wars toys, as far as action figures go, went on about a 10-year hiatus. So from 1985's Power of the Force and slash droids and Ewoks, right?
Mhm.
So you have that. Then you have nothing but a couple of Bendums,
I'm staring at my
literal.
Vader Bendum on my wall. I should have brought
They're so bad. There's Bendums and there's Micro Machines,
that.
and that's
Mhm.
pretty much all there is.
Yeah.
Star Wars is at a very low point
Mhm.
this point in time. There are a couple of highlights between 1985 and 1995. A couple of very small highlights. I would add the Super Nintendo Star Wars games would be
Mhm.
an example of that. I would say the Timothy Zahn
Mhm.
Empire trilogy was
Yeah.
very, very big at that point in time, but we
Very
didn't
key.
get much. The
Mm.
THX re-releases on VHS, you know, like
Yep. Yep.
it was very limited. Kenner not sure if Star Wars can make the money anymore.
Mhm.
So, Jeff, actually, with apologies, because you and Ken are going to be the heavyweights. As I've already shown, I'm a casual.
Oh,
There's
I
no
get it. Me and Kenner.
Ah,
Be nice.
ah,
very nice, very nice.
um,
But I do
uh,
want to kind of like the prequel leading up to this because it
Sure.
dives into one of my favorite areas, which is like the Charlie Day conspiracy theories. This causes that. I'm a
mhm.
huge sports guy, basketball in
Mhm.
particular. I know you two are baseball, but like
Mhm.
one of my favorite things I've written is that basically Dikembe Mutombo in 1994 defeating the Seattle Supersonics is why Kevin Durant ended up on the Golden State Warriors. So I love
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. And George Lucas, just as a whole, has so many of these. And so this is like the good backstory. If you watch The Toys That Made Us, that would be the I do. There's also a great Pixel Dan video with a Dan Larson from Secret Galaxy, Toy Galaxy on it. I was kind of shocked that Dan Larson doesn't have this. I didn't find one on like Secret Galaxy proper, but Dan Larson is, of course, in a video related to this.
Yeah.
But the backstory is Kenner kind of is this Cinderella story to acquire the rights to the original Star Wars Power of the Force because George Lucas kind of was secretive about it, so he didn't give it a lot of lead time. And
Mhm.
so no one wanted to touch it because movie studios or toy companies had been burned by making movie toys in the past. So Kenner, amazing deal. They get 95% of the revenue on any figure sold. George Lucas gets 2.5%. Fox gets the remaining 2.5%. And the deal's even worse because it's forever, as long as Kenner pays George Lucas 10,000 either in royalties or by check. So they either have to be selling enough toys to generate 10,000 revenue to sell George Lucas. So 2.5 times, whatever you'd have to do the math. So 250,000, or just cut a check for 10,000. That's it. But here is what ends up happening. And there's a lot of weird things. So Hasbro, there's also on the Toys That Made Us, the CEO dies unexpectedly and his brother takes over. Both Titans, both great people. Let me get the names. So that's Stephen Hasenfeld and Alan Hasenfeld. So Stephen
Mhm.
was known as more shrewd. Alan takes over. Alan's maybe not as savvy business wise, which will come up. That happens in 1987. Kenner is bought out by Tonka, hostile takeover for $600 million. In 1991, Hasbro buys out Tonka for $500 million. This is under the auspice of Allen.
Yeah. For those of you that Tonka most famously known for yellow toy trucks. That's what most people know Tonka for.
Yeah.
I personally know them most for Supernaturals, the
Ooh.
very limited articulation hologram based action figures that did not fly. They
Mm.
didn't they it was a failed toy line that I loved.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun ones. Yeah, and that's what's actually funny because on like the talking heads about this, Alan, when he is discussing purchasing Tonka, and Kenner is like, they have all these amazing toys to get. And you're like, okay, well, one of the most important things you'd figure in this $500 million purchase is this $10,000 licensing rate
Mm.
to Star Wars toys, which I think at one point it's mentioned Star Wars, like 7 movies have made $1 billion at the box office, whereas the toys have made like 2 billion. And you
Mhm.
bring this point up all the time, Jeff. When people look at movie grosses, movies are toy commercials.
Star Wars is a toy commercial.
Mm.
Doesn't mean it's not good. It just means it's a toy commercial first.
It 100% was, right? George Lucas, correct you two Star Wars nerds, correct me if I'm wrong. George Lucas back in the day took a pay cut on his director and writing fee for the first movie to keep basically the merchandising rights.
Yeah, I think the rights to the sequel films. Yeah.
Smartest
Yeah.
business decision that has ever been made in Hollywood, I think.
Now, flip side, calls the Kenner deal he made, the 2.5% perpetual deal, the stupidest deal. And I think it actually explains a lot to nerds like us, because after those first movies ends, we're like, where are the movies? Where are the movies? Where are the movies? And George Lucas wisely is probably like, these are toy commercials and I am getting nothing on the toys. So why in the hell would I make more toy commercials? Enter
And
Hasbro.
that's fair. Although I'd also add that George Lucas has a compulsion to make Star Wars, but he also is a weird. George Lucas reminds me of me because he seems like a perfectionist that also kind of seems like he's waiting to the last minute. Like a book report where it's like,
oh yeah,
the book report's due Monday. He starts reading Sunday afternoon.
yeah.
Like that's the energy that I had as a student. So I see that a lot in the prequels. And there's some stuff, apocryphal or not, that may support that theory that a lot of pre-production and development and designs have gone in forth without a script. That happens.
I mean, of course, that's the worst part of like Iron Man, right? Like Iron Man, they were just making stuff up on the fly.
Oh yeah, they changed a lot of stuff on Iron Man. Yeah,
But anyway, so
Go ahead.
1991, Hasbro buys Tonka, gets this amazing deal, but then they forget, they like just don't do it. And here's the defense: in 1991 dollars, that's not 10,000, that's 22,000. So that's a lot of money. Why would you
Yeah.
spend $20,000 on the license to Star Wars?
Where's Hasbro gonna get that kind of money?
That
Or
just
Hasbro.
something 600 million, 500 million. So it had dipped. And I mean, it possibly did. I mean, it's possible that Kenner was hostily bought out by Tonka thinking, oh, Star Wars money. And then they're like, where are the movies? Value drops. Hasbro still spends a lot of money. And again, on the toys that made us, actually, the G.I. Joe episode, the Hasbro CEO is like, the lawyers and other people are like diplomatically being like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's just buying stuff, not doing good deals. But that actually brings back, like, why did the prequels come back? This deal got renegotiated. Instead of 2.5%, George Lucas goes up to 18%. And that's re-releases. That's when we get the new toys. That's when this comes along. That's when we get the new movies. So like Hasbro kind of being silly kind of led to the modern thing. And then of course, George Lucas gets burned on the prequels. George Lucas sells to Disney. So like everything from like 95 on is this weird bureaucratic company forgetting to sign a check, which to me, like, I'm the type of nerd that just loves that type of history.
Yeah, that is an interesting. That's a hell of a theory, and I don't necessarily think it's wrong. I don't know if that's why George would decide to do re-releases and things like that. I think it's just that he is a weird perfectionist that can't let stuff go. But it is really interesting that we start seeing this sort of repush and this reboot on here. I bought everything for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
I'm not lying when I say everything. Like
95, yeah.
95 and 96, I had pretty much everything. And then 97, 98. Like I started to pull a little bit away when I was running out of room.
Money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
It happens. Yeah, we all, yeah.
So
Same.
we
same
could
here.
honestly, and there's again the toys that made us, I think even better than the toys that made us, Plastic Galaxy, which is a 2014 documentary about Kenner's Star Wars specifically. Goes a little bit longer and deeper than the toys that made us. The toys that made us has a bandwidth limit. And Plastic Galaxy is a bit more of a feature. I suggest watching both. They're very enjoyable. And that'll give you a very good explanation or background of classic Star Wars toys.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we can kind of yada 1978 to 1994.
Financials and geeky, that's the important stuff, right, Jeff? We don't need to talk the toys, just talk the financials and the numbers,
Boy, do the people want to hear more about the financials, Dre.
Let's go to
When
the ledger.
people tuning into a Star Wars podcast and they're like, but what about the ledgers?
Red or black? What are we in?
Yeah.
So we have 1995 and they're the original card design is gorgeous. It's one of my
Mm.
all-time favorite card designs. It
Yeah,
might
yeah.
be right behind Masters of the Universe original as the best designed card.
You're talking the original Kenner or the Power of the Force?
I'm talking
2.
Power of the Force,
2.
1995.
Yeah, got it, correct.
The original Kenner is fine. It's kind of
Mhm.
uninspired. It's yeah, it's black. There's space. There's a Star Wars logo. Congratulations, right? Like it's iconic, but it's not.
Yeah.
They're not taking any big swings. I think Masters of the Universe has a much more interesting design scale because it's its own IP, right?
Mm,
1995 comes out. First off, it is a contoured card. It's not a perfectly rectangular card. It's actually
mhm.
contoured to Darth Vader's profile helmet. It's like
Right.
a
Yeah.
three-quarter profile. And so like every card has this like kind of like soft outline of Vader's helmet in the top left, which is awesome.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
color designs are interesting because we call them the red cards, even though they're orange.
Right, right.
They are designed to be like there's a diagonal lightsaber design cutting across the middle to like light it up, and they're orange,
Yeah.
which is an interesting choice that works.
It's mall food court orange, but it's good.
It it is.
Huh.
And then they switched it to green, and then when Star Wars then does the saga, which we're not really covering, they end up doing blue as their color scheme. So we have primarily orange, green, and then
Right.
we will get purple with the Shadows of the Empire run, which we can talk about in a little
Oh,
while.
yeah.
But ultimately, looking at this, we're going to get a frenzy. 1995 is the height of speculation in the collectibles market. A time period when we saw, for a very limited time, people that understood collectibles
Mm.
and rarity, scarcity, etc., but didn't understand how things become collectible. So, spoiler alert, if you bought something in 1995 and it says collectible on the packaging, it's not.
Yeah.
Worthless.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah. Throw back to you because, like, Jeff actually asked you about owning any of the original 1970s run of figures, and I think you said, you sold them at a garage sale for a skateboard. I think is this the story?
Yeah, that's my, what leads to Kevin Durant. $2 for a lunch pail full of Star Wars figures that I got a skateboard that ended up becoming a catcher's mitt.
Yeah. Now all of OKC hates you, but we finally got one more point on the line. I love it. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's all of us have stories like that for things that
Mhm.
become valuable. You're like, I had one of those as a kid and I threw it out. It's like, that
Mhm.
is why it's valuable because everybody threw it out. And if someone kept one around in good condition, it's whatever. But I mean, like, I remember this
Yeah.
area, like what you're talking about. Something I'm really digging right now with the nostalgia boom is the X-Men coming back. And I remember just being in love with X-Men. The X-Men toys were amazing. And it was impossible to find. So, like Iceman was impossible to find. Magneto
Yeah.
was impossible to find because people would go to the store and buy them as speculation, keep them in box, not play with them, not sell them. And kids that wanted the toys to play with can't. And then, of course, these people in the future will discover, hey, everybody did that, so they're not as valuable as other things.
Mm.
Yes. And that actually does happen to one very specific toy in wave one, which is Princess Leia, who
Yep.
ended up being what we refer to as the case hit.
Mhm.
So Princess Leia, the first edition of Princess Leia, only one per case, which is a problem. Of course, we find out that they ended up having to go in and resculpt her face and re-release it because she is referred to affectionately as Monkey Face Leia.
Mm. Mhm.
Um, but
Mhm.
yes, and those ended up, I mean, they were selling $50 a pop right off the top, right? But we're
Mm.
really at the height of toy speculation. The comic boom is the comic bubble is about to burst. The baseball card bubble, the collectibles bubble
Mhm.
in general is about to burst. And
Right, you're right.
luckily, Star Wars action figures cover two worlds in toys for children and full-grown adults that are putting them on. There's a really wonderful Star Wars ad SNL did
Yeah.
about Star Wars toys, where it was like all these kids are like doing that, and he's like, "And for us," and it's like a bunch of adults like putting them in cases.
When
I
he
think
buys
that
like 4, you need to buy 4, like 1 for the
yeah.
case, 1.
Yeah, kids like, I have 3, 1 to open, 1 to keep in the package, and 1 for safety. And the kid just looks back and goes, "Why?" It's just such a
It's
perfect.
it's a great sketch. I had interviewed Bobby Moynihan on Jedi Council years ago, and he, was in that sketch, and he's like, most of those in the sketch were mine.
That was
Like,
that seems like his thing. I
Awesome.
I do know him through my old connections,
yeah,
and
he's
did
great.
pull his autograph. Remember
He's
we
great.
pulled the when we pulled a Fiona Shaw autograph and a Bobby Moynihan autograph in the same box of
Love
fine.
it.
Now, so I'm going to do a quick little run of the waves, and just so here's what we're working with here, and I'm going to do this very, very quickly because there's turns out a lot of goddamn toys
Yeah,
that Kenner is making, like
it's
a lot of them.
it's robust.
So we have our first run, and that's the red cards, and that's going to be the first major push. On wave one, we have Obi-Wan, 3PO, Chewie, Vader, Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Leia, short print, R2D2, and the Stormtrooper. Right,
Mm.
2 bad guys. The rest of them are good guys, but you have an army builder. Congratulations. We also saw released, I believe, in that first wave, the Falcon, the X-wing, and the TIE fighter. I think that's the first wave, right? Wave 2, we get Boba Fett.
Mm.
We get Lando, and we get X-Wing Luke. Boba Fett has 2 variants we're going to find out. Because there's one that has half circles and one that has full circles. People went crazy for these. And that's actually one of the things that's very, like, people were matching like the serial numbers on the back of the toy to their value. That's
Mm.
how insane the collecting was going at this point in time. Case in point, the first thing that I am going to call attention to. I brought visual aids, courtesy of Blast from the Past on beautiful Magnolia in Burbank, California, who loaned some things out to me because I didn't want to pay for them. So I asked if I could borrow some toys and bring them back. The first thing we have here, this is a carded X-Wing Luke with a
Nice.
long lightsaber, right? This lightsaber is about 6 feet tall, roughly.
Yeah, to scale. Yeah.
Right? Pretty massive, right? This is the first one that comes out. Kenner is, well, fans realistically are like, that's too big.
Why do you hate the back? Jeff,
Giggity.
you gotta show the back too, man.
Yeah, I'm going to show the back. The back just shows
Back-
other ones here.
Yeah,
Now,
they got cool stuff. Like, and by the way, just throwing back to last episode on GI Joe, that was like a coalescence of GI Joe, right? Because GI Joe had the cards on the back. Hasbro
and then the
takes
file cards. Yeah, Hasbro loves a file card.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point.
So, next we have, and you'll see in the visual, it's a shorter lightsaber. This is a little bit more accurate to the film.
Mhm.
Right. And so the long lightsabers, people were like, well, these are the ones that are more valuable because they were first, not the corrected one, right? But oh no. You see, there's another version that was even more valuable because there were short sabers, but for a very short point in time, and you can see right over here, there's a short saber in a long saber tray. And people were,
Right.
that's the one. That's the most valuable because it's a very short period where they were making the correction, but they didn't correct the tray. Turns out we were insane.
Mm.
This is
Mm.
insane that
Yeah.
people were trying to do that. That's the collectible energy that was happening back then. It was an
Mhm.
ardent fervor of unhinged behavior. It's the only way I can describe it. People were going wild for the different lightsabers.
Yeah.
Even
But
though
it-
they were keeping them.
Am I not wrong that's also like the nostalgia amped up because toys that
Mhm.
made Joe Line was talking like Luke's hair would be different, and people would be like, "Oh, these 2 versions of the same run," because they did lots of
Mhm.
re-releases, sold so well. People were like, they're different, and what they would just miss is like, oh, what probably happened is the factory one day the die was a little off, and they released that line, and it was fine, right? It did break QA, so they released it. So all of that kind of stuff where people are getting super psyched. That's been baked in since the beginning. And
Mm,
then Kenner, when they did the re-release in 95, so Hasbro really like just like leaned into it and even went further. I think the biggest thing, I got a question
mm,
for you. I saw this all the time on all the videos. It's a running joke about Grand Moff Tarkin not being in any of the original releases.
Yeah.
And
mhm,
Power of the Force 95, not the first one, but I think one of Jeff will know the wave
right.
does release, because that's the thing with Power of the Force. That's my memory of this, Jeff. I worked at Target from 97 onward. So a few years out, but it's just, I remember the Star Wars aisle. It's like every character you could think of was there. Intentionally so. But yeah, I was
Mm,
curious, Ken, like the
mm.
Grand Moff Tarkin. Why don't we get a Grand Moff Tarkin joke that just seems to be a running thing in the Star Wars collecting community? Because it comes up on a lot of
Yeah.
videos.
And he
Yeah, it
came
really
out
does.
in wave 5 of the green cards, I believe, is where he
Yeah, one of my favorites of the line. Yeah,
um
I think it is that. It's because we didn't get one of the main villains in Star Wars. We never got it. Like it's kind of mind-boggling, and I don't know all the reasons behind it. I've watched those videos like you're saying. But yeah, it was so
yeah,
cool. It was
they
so
they
fun
they
to
went
get
with
Tarkin.
like they gave you Crix Maydeen.
Yeah,
They
I had Crix in his pointer.
I had Crix Maydeen, and I remember my brother and we chopped his arms and legs off with, I think my mom called them loppers, but like, the weed cutters.
Yeah. Crix
Um,
deserves better.
so the question that I presumed, and it's actually
Mhm,
something that I wanted to bring up, but one of the main legacies of Power of the Force 2 was that Kenner was trying to figure out how to make Star Wars different than what it was instead of just
mm,
re-releasing. They didn't want
mhm,
to add articulation. That right,
mm.
that's going to add more expenses and, whatever. But they were like, "But we could superhero them up a little bit." And
Yep.
it's designed a lot to, look a little bit like that first Star Wars poster.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know the one, where he's all shredded.
Behind me. Yeah.
So we have yeah, right there, like, very fantasy, very Flash
Mhm,
Gordon.
mhm, mhm.
Right behind Ken. Ken has it right behind him.
Autographed by Alan Ladd Jr.
Hell yeah. I'm not the autograph I expected to hear.
Mhm.
All options, I think you're like, "This is autographed by Alan Ladd." But so
Junior, sir, junior.
sorry. So what we end up getting here is they decide that they're going to deal with superheroes. Superheroes are very
Mm,
popular at the time. Spider-Man, the animated series, X-Men toy lines are still running relatively strongly around this time.
mm,
So
mm.
they decide to put out superhero proportions.
Yeah.
So if you look at like the first Luke Skywalker, who is a 16-year-old farm kid, he looks like a bodybuilder.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he's swole as hell.
He's he's been taking some pills, some vitamins. Say it as prayers.
But so that actually got to the point where like Hasbro and Kenner decided they needed to redo the sculpts. And so eventually they abandon the jacked style and go to a
It did, huh?
photorealistic. Um, but so that was wave one. Wave two, we get our Boba Fett, our Lando, and our Luke. Lando again was short cased, so he was
Mm,
short packed. Um, Lando and Leia were the big gets at the time. Everybody was investing all this money on them, and then Kenner just re-released cases that were heavy packed with Leia's and Lando's, and everybody's investments fell apart.
mhm.
And that was everybody's first reminder that if you are collecting a modern child's toy for money, you are gambling. You have no
Yeah.
right to get angry if a company that sells toys
Mhm.
sells a toy.
It's so funny you're talking about that era too, and I was like, 18, 19, when this line comes out,
Yeah.
and even then it was so like, "Well, I'm not gonna mess it up this time. Ain't selling these in a lunch pail. Keeping all these so I can go to college or buy a house," and yeah.
Wait, when we get to, like, our own personal, like, final experiences, I cannot wait to tell you what I did with my toys, with my Power of the Force set.
Yeah.
Um, Wave 3, we get Hoth Han, we get Dagobah Luke, we get, the TIE fighter pilot, and we get Yoda, right? So,
Mhm,
our big
mhm,
gets on this one is Yoda and the TIE fighter pilot, right? We have
mhm,
2 new, outfits, but, we're getting Yoda finally, we're getting there. We get, Wave 4, we get, Carbonite Han and Jedi Luke.
Ooh.
Jedi Luke is going to
yeah.
be a big deal because there are going to
Yeah.
be multiple versions of this. There's the tan vest, there's the black vest, there's the theater exclusive version. I believe there might even be a gray vest variant off the top of my head.
I'm scrolling on Galactic Figures. I'm trying to find all the variants, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Some of that
it's
there.
Wave 5, we get the Jawas, which are one of my absolute favorite toys that we get there. It's a 2-pack and they're light reactive, so their eyes glow when you hold them near the sun.
Can you
Uh,
explain why you say it with a Boston accent?
what, Jawas?
Jawas instead of Jawas?
Because that's how I said them all the time. I
Yeah,
say it
these
the way I say
Jawas
it.
are coming in here and getting a Wobits.
These friggin' Jawas, I tell you, kid.
This feels racist. I don't know why.
Seems racist.
Like someone from
Ye-
Boston, that accent, you're like, I don't know what's going on, but you know,
I gotta be honest, not the least racist thing about the Jawas.
yeah, no, well, them on their own. Yeah.
That is
Yes.
like, did you guys just decide to make Mexicans? Like, that's what you kind of
Look.
the energy that you get when you look at them. You're like,
Yeah,
I have some
mean,
questions about this specific character that you've designed.
I will say this real quickly, and some of that stuff George borrowed and he had all his influences, and I think he's a genius for it. He was trapped in a certain time. Even the Tusken Raiders have been wonderfully corrected in Star Wars by going, "Hey, we know it was an old West trope. Local natives. We're going to do a little deeper dive on who they are as actual beings." So I think we've got a little bit of that with the Jawas, but I agree. We need the Jawas show.
Hey,
Yeah.
did you catch up on Book of Boba Fett, Jeff, or do we have to leave off?
Oh, I
Tusken.
watched that. I watched the Book of Boba Fett.
Wait. Oh, maybe that's what broke you for Mandalorian season 3. You're like, you know what? No.
We don't need to get into my opinions on Book of Boba Fett, but one of my favorite things.
We did at my party because
We
I
did.
love it.
Okay, yeah. Well, I love when they were like, "Well, you guys aren't enjoying Book of Boba Fett. Wait till you check out the next episode." And then the next episode was just an episode of The Mandalorian, and I was like, "That's
Don't
not making me
Don't
feel
you.
better."
My hot take on Book of Boba Fett, Jeff, which I did enjoy, and the reason I enjoyed it is I compare it to baseball. It was a lot like just having a baseball game on. I was like, not a lot's happening. Kind of familiar with it. I can look up when I hear loud noises. It's basically the same as having a baseball game on in the background. Hyper enjoyable.
It's like watching the Brewers and Twins in July. Okay, that's fair. I'll take that as a win. I love the show, but I'll take that as a win.
I was a big fan of the hot, fine ass Twilight.
The guy with his shirt off. The
No.
one who greets him at the
No,
door.
what's her name?
Garza Whip.
Yeah.
Garza Whip. You thirsty
What
man.
was the actor? Who was that?
Jennifer B.
It was
Beals.
Jennifer Beals. Okay,
Yeah,
I thought I was mixing it up.
Garza's one of my favorite characters. So
Yeah.
that's why I love the show.
One of mine too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he's picked that. Jeff has drawn that card multiple times on I Must Break You, and same comments. So yeah, nice throwback.
I have sent everyone out. I always get a request for those on I Must Break You.
Can you send me one?
People are like, "Can you send me the fine
Mhm.
as hell Twilight lady?" I'm like, "I sure can." Now, waves 5 and 6. This is actually a very important wave because waves 5 and 6, Jawas, Luke Skywalker in Stormtrooper gear, Mo Monadon, who's Hammerhead, if you remember him as
Mhm,
original, R5D4, the Tusken Raider, and then 6 was the Gunner, the Death Star Gunner, Greedo,
Mhm.
and the Tatooine Stormtrooper, right? Or the Sand Trooper, as we call him, or Davin Felth, if you want to give a name to that specific one.
Yeah.
These were out on red cards for a flash, and were immediately sort of the first main green repack. Right. So like wave 1 of the green cards, Greedo, Jawas, Momonadon, Jedi Knight, R5D4, Tusken Raider, Yoda. They got all repacked. But the red card, wave 5 and 6, were actually the most valuable at the time because they were nearly impossible to get.
Interesting.
I actually had them. I collected them all. I found them. I did not get them when they were first released in the wave. So I had originally gotten them as green cards, and then I periodically pieced them together. And they weren't cheap until I sold them. And then they were very cheap.
Yes, exactly.
But in that red pack, there were a couple of other things. One was the classic edition 4-pack, which had the classic Kenner versions of Luke, Vader, Han, and Chewie. There were deluxe figures, 3 of them: Crowd Control Stormtrooper, Smuggler Flight Pack Han Solo, and Desert Sport Skiff Luke Skywalker. Sure. For vehicles, we got the ATST, the Land Speeder, the Snow Speeder, and the speeder bike with the Scout Stormtrooper, as well as, I told you before, the Falcon, the TIE Fighter, the X-Wing. And then we got the Detention Block Rescue and Death Star Escape playsets, the 2 collector's cases, and my favorite thing that I still have, the exclusive Fruit Loops Han Solo and Stormtrooper gear.
Oh, yeah.
I still have them
So
somewhere.
cool. So cool. Anytime you get that, it's cool.
That was also one that was worth a little bit. He's become pretty yellowed. I'm gonna have to give him a
Yeah.
hydrogen peroxide bath. Really, really clean that up a little bit.
Film it on your new ASMR channel, Bath Time with Figures.
Bath Time with Figures. Welcome to Bath Time with Figures. We're gonna be bathing in nice Han Solo Stormtrooper gear. You can only get these through Fruit Loops.
I appreciate the comments we're going to be getting on this episode now, Jeff, because of that 5-second clip.
Let's do it, baby. So that's the red pack. That's the first initial fever of Kenner being like, are people going to want this? Yes. Star Wars fandom,
Yes,
which is wonderful, as Ken will write a book about, is also a sickness. And it's the Pokemon of collectibles. Like you have to get everything. And go ahead.
Right. You're saying you collected a lot, and Ken, you said you even made the joke. You're like, I'm not going to make the same mistake. How much did you do, and how much did you keep?
I did, at the time I was working my radio job for $5 an hour, so I wasn't exactly, rolling out there. But I did, instead of completing college, I went to Toys R Us every day with my friends and bought a lot of these. And I do have most of them still. A lot of them out of package, some of them not. But over the years too, I've reacquired some of them. I have a couple plastic totes in my storage bin that are just like purchased from 95 to 2006. Here's the bottle of them. Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your well, we'll get to that afterwards. So next we have a shift from red card to green card, orange, whatever we want to say. So if you ever see the orange carded ones, that's the first sort of series of Power of the Force 2.
Gotcha.
We get to the green lightsaber. That's an actual screen accurate lightsaber color. And we're getting now we're also going to get into like a little bit of the like, oh, you guys will make a toy for anything at this point in time. Like that's where you're just like, because that first wave, you get like an ATST driver, Bosk, a Hoth Rebel soldier, which I mean that's good anyway. Luke Skywalker and Hoth gear, but also 2-1B, the medical droid, and that's where you start to be like, all right, they're doing a Star Wars thing again. We're now starting to put everything out there. As well as the repacks. Then wave 2, we got Bib Fortuna, Palpatine, which people have been waiting for.
Yeah.
Endor Han, Skiff Guard Lando, or Tamtel Screech, if you want to refer to him that way. And then that we also got repacks of Boba, 3PO, Vader, Solo, Luke's X-Wing Luke, R2, Stormtrooper, and Sandtrooper, right? We got Hoth Rebel Troopers before we got Rebel Fleet Troopers, who are the first rebels we ever see.
Oh, yeah.
First character we see, I believe, because I believe we even see a Rebel Trooper running before we see R2 and 3PO, maybe?
Yeah, that might be one of those trivia questions you'd win at a bar.
They're the ones that are wearing half a punch bowl on their head and a pair of gray slacks.
Yep.
I was like, just kind of like slip that under the radar, right? Because aren't you a Star Wars trivia winner? Like, aren't you good at that? I think the comment
used to be. Yeah, I competed in something called the Movie Trivia Schmodown and was the first ever Star Wars trivia champion. Lost it to Sam Witwer because he's a machine.
I was literally going to say, did you lose it to Sam?
I defeated him, and there was other people in the match, but he bowed out early, and I won. And then he came back. We had a kind of a famous Iron Man match. With 30 minutes straight, rapid question, and it came down to the final one, and he won because he's great.
He
But
is.
I have forgotten all of that stuff now, the numbers and everything. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the
yeah.
odds of successfully navigating
Yeah, I
brick,
don't know anymore, like,
you
all
know
that
that.
stuff.
You do
Yeah.
know that one though, right?
I don't remember. I have it was side note. So it was like you were watching movie and you were freeze framing everything, you were writing every number down, and I've even forgotten like things that Millennium what now? Like it's weird. I've had a trauma block on a lot of the information.
You got the trivia version of CTE
Yeah. Yeah.
because of that. You fought too much and now you've lost all of the skill that you've
Yep.
needed to have there. Yeah.
Yep.
Although my joke about that with, C3PO being a numbers guy myself is after a while, you're like, I think you maybe just suck at math, C3PO, because he keeps throwing out these stats. And I'm like, yeah, the odds of all of those things you keep saying can't happen happening are so astronomical. I don't think your numbers are right, C3PO. That's my hot numbers take.
Show your
I
work. Show
mean,
your work.
it just goes to show you that Han is 1 in 3,720.
There you go.
So we finally got a rebel trooper in wave 3, as well as a skiff guard, and then we got
Mm.
a repacks of Leia, Obi-Wan, Stormtrooper Luke, and the TIE fighter pilot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So wave 4, now we're getting like Forlom, Admiral Akbar, Dengar, but this is very important. We get our first look at the special editions with the ASP-7 droid.
Mm.
That's a droid that punches another droid. That's it. I'm just like, oh, there you go. Now along with
I have that. I think I have that somewhere.
uh do you have that?
I think I have
I mean, I had it.
Yeah.
But we also got the special edition creature assortments that came out around the
Yeah.
same time,
Yeah.
which is Han and Weird Jabba, Smooth Jabba.
Mhm.
We got a Jawa with a Ronto and
Right.
a Sand Trooper on a dewback.
Okay.
So we're getting all of those things. There are a lot of other play sets that come through here. We have an Endor Attack, a Hoth Battle play set, lots of vehicles, including the A-Wing, the Cruise Missile Trooper, Vader's Custom TIE, the T-16 Hopper, Leia and Luke each get a speeder bike,
Mhm.
a power racing speeder bike, a Cruise Missile Trooper, which is weird.
Oh, my question to Ken, just on
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
et cetera. I'm curious because when we're talking, like, yeah, these were pricey and some of the bigger things. Like, did you go much for the vehicles, or I heard you mention some of the play sets? Well, like the vehicles,
Yeah.
I know those are pricey, and like those I could never pull the trigger on.
Yeah, that comes from my upbringing too. I had like one or two big items in all lines, in GI Joe and everything. And then like the one time I bought a big ticket item in GI Joe, I decided to get that oil refinery stand for GI Joe, like
Oh
a
yeah.
base. Like they went. I don't know why I did that. So yeah, when it came to Star Wars, even to this day, like I've 3 packs, cinema scenes type of stuff, great, but I've never really had the vehicles.
Yeah. Oh, I'll jump to cinema scenes now that you brought that up. We have in the green, and you know what? Let me finish the waves because we have a couple more.
No,
Wave 5, we get Garandon Tarkin finally, Pope
I'm
Baba, and a Death Star Gunner repacked. Wave 6, Bespin Han and Slave Leia, or Jabba's prisoner Leia, or as they refer to her now, Hut Slayer Leia.
that's
mm,
my
And boy, was that a popular toy.
wonder why.
Men. This is men.
man.
Men. Wave 7, we have EV-99, also known as the Torture Droid, Gamma Ray and Guard, Malakili, who's the Rancor Keeper, Nyan Num, and Yak Face, also known as Salt Marae. In Wave 8, we have the Snow Trooper and the Emperor's Royal Guard, so the red guys.
Mhm.
And we have Wave 9 Luke Skywalker in his ceremonial. That was like the first new sculpt that they did in the which I believe Ken was one of your picks for favorite
I think
toy
so. Yeah, I think
in
so.
that right. And then a Bouche Leia repack, because there's in the middle of this, we're also going to get Shadows of the Empire. And I'm very
Mm.
excited to talk about Shadows of the Empire because that's a nice side quest that we're going to have immediately after this. And it's a very perfect symmetrical choice. So deluxe figures, we get Boba Fett with a backpack, a Hoth Rebel soldier with, I believe, an Atgar laser cannon, a probe droid that shoots missiles, and a snow trooper with the E-Web blaster, which is awesome.
Mhm.
Like, this is awesome.
Mhm.
Have this guy get shot by the Millennium Falcon. We also got your glowing power effects characters. We got a Palpatine with electricity, an Obi-Wan with a green light up lightsaber. That was something people were not happy about,
Mm.
that they gave him a green lightsaber. An R2 that does whatever. I don't know why anybody would have bought a electronic power effects R2. That's a weird one. Vader and Luke, right?
I'm
Now,
looking at that line right now. What does the Palpatine do? Does it have shoot
his
the
electricity glows.
electricity?
So you have a little
Oh, wow.
electricities that you would stick into his hands and they would glow.
I mean, kinda
Yeah, it
want
was lame.
kinda
These were
want that
lame.
now, though. That'd be a good nightlight.
Would it be to see a little old
Yeah.
creep?
So I had to jump in with this. One of the few collectibles I have uh, is a Ganondorf statue from Wind Waker. But I got it, and like my wife, I was like, "Isn't this cool?" And she's like, "Why?" And I was like, "Cause it's a cool statue." And it has a light effect. So you can press a button and some lights turn on. It's supposed to represent, because this is when he's in the water fighting Link at the very end of the
Mm.
game. Spoilers for a 20-year-old game. So they're fighting in like the water, and it has that effect with the lights. And she was like, "Oh, so it's like it could be a nice nightlight." And I was like, but it's a statue. It's a collectible statue." She's like, "I don't get it, but it's a nice nightlight." So when you're like, I could get that. I could get the Palpatine
Mhm.
nightlight.
Mhm.
So
Right
There's
there.
there's a joy that I experience when it comes down to looking at sort of the frivolity of this, of
Mhm.
collectibles and our hobby. Like, I don't pretend that this is some high level thing. It's just like,
Mhm.
no, like, I like a movie for children. I like the toys. I collect
Mhm.
the toys and I collect the statues or the cards or whatever. I'm not going to pretend this isn't for kids. I'm just going to glorify that I love a thing that's for kids. Like, that to me is, I think, equally as valid as pretending that Star Wars is a movie for serious adults.
Yeah.
Like, part of the glory of loving geeky fandoms is that you can be an adult and love things that children love because it's transcendent.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Um,
It's a guiding light in our lives, Jeffrey.
yeah. Except the murders in Return of the Jedi are so brutal. All of the deaths in Return of the Jedi are so much more harsh than everything we've ever seen.
George was in a darker spot. It's a light, fluffy movie, but he was in a dark spot.
The-
I forgot.
I
I
get the moment in your book, Ken, but I did love it's in a video game. But I did love that you were like, if you actually think about that from a stormtrooper perspective, the
Oh,
stormtroopers by Ewoks, and then I didn't realize that apparently in one of the Star Wars games you get to do that.
yeah. Yeah. It's Ewok Hunt is the mode from Battlefront 2 that it's frightening. It's a horror film.
it's really fascinating. I think a lot about how they show us the Rancor eating a Gamorrean guard like a Snickers.
Mhm. Mhm. Scared me. Oh my god,
And
terrifying.
like you look at that and you're like, that's really bad.
Yeah.
It's such a brutal, and like the way that people die in the Sarlacc is hideous. And
Mhm.
there's like on Endor, there's one scene where like Luke throws a dude into a tree at about 190
Oh
miles
yeah.
an hour. And like all I can think about is how that man has just been liquefied
Oh,
into
he's
that
gone.
tree.
Yeah, the deaths in Jedi, the biker scouts alone.
Yeah.
Nanta, the Ewok, that affected my life.
It's so brutal. Yeah, it's such a like a hideous scenario. We'll jump right to the cinema scenes that
Okay.
Ken, you had mentioned, because there was the Cantina Showdown, which is Evazan, Obi-Wan, and Ponda Baba. There's the Death Star escape, Han, Luke, and Chewie.
Mm.
There's the final Jedi duel with Palpatine, Vader, and Luke, where Palpatine's like in his
Mhm.
chair hanging out. There's the Minoc hunt, which seemed to be the one that people like were really chasing at the time, which was
Mm.
Chewie, Han, and Leia all in like the Bane mask. They'll
Mm.
have their sleep apnea masks on.
I definitely have to jump in on the Minoc hut to be just the worst type of fan, Ken. So you have that great on the Force Center.
Yep.
It's audio only, but there is some video editing where there's intersplicing of figures at various places.
Right.
During the Minoc hunt, that's one section where it's not spliced in. So I was like watching, I was like, I want to see what it looks
I forget to do it.
like.
Yeah.
Look up this toy. by myself. But yeah, that's one of the ones you listed, which is fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And we also got a special edition cinema scene, which was Jabba the Hutt's dancers. We get Griata, who's the sexy Rhodian. We get Lin May, who is the Asian
Singer.
Twi'lek,
Mhm.
and Rystal, whose
Yeah,
race I'm forgetting. Who's
see, I see. I forgot all that trivia. These are good trivia answers. I knew at one point.
what it all comes down to, that by the way is probably the most hated scene in Star Wars other than Greedo shooting first.
And you brought up the pettiness of it, right, Jeff?
It's
Or to help.
it is most likely Jedi Rocks was created as a fun way for George to punish the woman he was sleeping with while Return of the Jedi was being made. Lapty Neck being pulled, and of course the sound engineer ended up being the final singing voice of Sice Noodles. And then it obviously didn't end well. George doesn't end relationships well. I don't know if you guys have heard the history of it. But
That I think includes some of his creative properties.
yes. And so Lapty Neck, which is this gorgeously ugly disco song that John Williams kind of threw together. And it was recorded. It's different than the one that showed up on the soundtrack for a reason. They never got it corrected. They left it in there. So she was getting crazy residuals for that. And what better way for George to screw over a former lover than to fully remove any opportunity for residuals?
Oh, Georgie.
It's a conspiracy theory that I 100% believe. And it tracks with every piece of information we have. God, Jedi Rocks is bad. Exclusives. We had the Cantina band members, which you could get only through the Star Wars Insider magazine. You got the same character with 5 different instruments, if I recall. So, because it was like Figrin Dan and Ichabel Gaunt and not Danik Jericho, excuse me. Nolan Cheel, I believe, is one.
Nolan Cheel.
Tech Moore is another one. I have a sickness. I don't know.
That's great.
That up. I don't know. And then later we would end up getting Barkwin Dan, but he's actually in the Max Rebo special edition band. Whatever. So now the funny part though is that in the middle of this, we ended up having a Shadows of the Empire run. Now, the reason that I'm doing an aside here for this is that Shadows of the Empire was an everything but a movie, multimedia explosion in which a novel was released that takes place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. It is, I'm going to say, the most famous of the expanded universe novels. I would say Heir to the Empire comes close, but Shadows of the Empire was a book, soundtrack, N64 video game, and toy line.
Let me ask you both about that, because here's what's funny for me. I had the N64 game.
Great game.
My argument I make is that Hoth was, every game loves Hoth.
As they should.
That was where perfect. And I'm going to sound like the old guy shouting at the clouds. We could have been done with the Hoth snow speeders after Shadows of the Empire N64. We weren't, but we could have been. It was awesome. I used to play that game listening to Smash Mouth. Like I've got this like visceral memory of like high school.
They pair well together.
Shadows of the Empire and listening to Smash. Like that's just one of those like weird memory. Like bring it up. It just starts popping into my head. Like Adreno is one of the songs that for whatever reason is there.
That's a good pair. That's like that's like a nice center cut fillet and a you just pair
like
them up perfect.
Crustables and like a vegan burrito, right, Jeff? Like we're doing.
I'd Smash Mouth is the Crustables of the Uncrustables of
the Uncrustables,
maybe. It's
about Shadows of the Empire. Like if that same wave hit you, because that definitely got me.
Oh, I
Yeah.
had every single Shadows of the Empire thing that they had here. So,
Mhm.
and Shadows of the Empire was a very interesting thing because Star Wars without a movie to support, people will buy it just because of the logo, but like pushing the
Yeah.
action figures was such a brilliant move because people are going to
Mhm.
buy the book and people are
Mhm.
going to be like, oh, I want to read the sound. I want to listen to the soundtrack while I'm reading the book. Well, I want to buy the video game so I can play as Dash Rendar.
Mm.
So
Mm.
it is definitely one of those really brilliant moves on Lucasfilm on George's. I guess I'm assuming this was George's idea to do all this and push it forward, or Kathleen Kennedy or whoever was in charge of Lucasfilm at the time, or Lucas Arts or whatever. Um, so we have Chewbacca disguised as Snuva, a
Mhm.
bodyguard, which is really interesting. We have Dash Rendar, who's the replacement Han Solo.
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
Han Solo had red hair,
Mhm.
Dash Rendar. Leia disguised as Boushh, that
Mhm.
we see as she's building her way to working her way to Jabba's palace to rescue Han. Luke Skywalker in Imperial Guard disguise, and
Mhm.
Prince Shizor
Mhm.
um, might be my least favorite character in all of Star Wars.
I don't like.
Is it because he sucks?
I always upset EU fans. I'm not a giant fan of Star Wars EU. I pulled out a lot. I stuck with the films and stuff and the books, and I read them. I Air the Empire. I like all this stuff, but like, yeah, the Shadows of the Empire. I played the game, and I'm with you too, Trey. Like I played Hoth, got through it, and was like, well, that's awesome. I'm going to go to Goldeneye. I'm not gonna. I didn't finish the game. Let's go to
Oh,
Goldeneye.
I mean, it's pretty cool. At one point in time, you have to fight the Dianoga, and he is big.
Right. Oh,
Um,
he's huge. Yeah.
it's funny
Anyways.
too because like I'm like, yeah, they did perfect it. And then I remembered Rogue Squadron has a Hoth level and it's insane. So also that Star Wars battle pod in the arcades.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. That's a good one too.
Shizor, so I'm saying names and these are characters that a lot of you might not be familiar with if you're just like, oh, I know the thing. Shizor is the leader of the Black Sun gang, a crime syndicate, and he's also
Hmm.
like a sex dragon man. He, he's a
Yeah.
he's like a
Yeah.
man that's also like a dragon man.
Yeah.
And he's good at sex. Shizor was Vader's rival.
Mm.
He was basically fighting Vader for the affection of
Mhm.
the Emperor and or more the favor of
The
the Emperor.
favor.
He he also had a toy that we did not get in this release, but he had an assassin sex droid named Guri.
Mm. Mm. I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
it was a pleasure droid that was recalibrated to be an assassin droid.
Mm.
Right. I do like, by the way, on the Shizor front, and then you guys mentioned this on like Dengar,
Mhm.
and I
Mhm.
think 'cause Batman, I absolutely love the character that is a rival to a main character, but the main character like doesn't care about them.
Just like,
I
yeah.
Vader plotting behind the scenes and all this, and Vader's like Don Draper, like I don't think about you at
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
all.
think about you at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, much like you are a flea.
A gnat.
Yeah, scratch you off my
Mm.
balls with these motherfucking paws. We also have a really great 2-pack of Boba Fett versus IG-88,
Mhm.
as well as we get, for the first time, we get the Slave One,
Mm. Mhm.
the, Outrider, and the Swoop, which is sort of the civilian version of a speeder
Right.
bike.
Right.
Um, and so that's Shadows of the Empire. It's a brilliant these were purple carded.
Mm.
Uh, well, Mace Windu preview.
Yeah.
Speaking of
Yeah.
which, that Mace Windu preview is a literal
Mm.
that's going to come out at some point in time. But so we ended up doing this sort of side quest, right?
Mm.
Now, I know where this is, it seems like a lot, and there's a reason for that, but we're going to come back. And so that's our first full run.
Come.
Now, we're going to see some of these toys re-released in the next run, the next wave of sort of things, which are the freeze frame figures.
Right.
Now let's talk collectability, folks.
Collectability.
We got to catch them all, baby. So the first version of green cards
Mhm.
were going to be green
Oh,
packed.
yeah, that's the one.
Wait, that's not the one I wanted. Hold on. Green packed hologram-less cards. It would just have the
Mhm.
photo
Mhm.
of the characters. So I'm holding up a Luke Skywalker in ceremonial outfit
Mm.
with, it should say all new likeness of Luke.
Mhm.
Let me ask what the cost is on that, because I'm noticing, unlike some of the other figures you borrowed from Blast from the past, that one doesn't have a price tag on it, so that almost implies
$9.99.
that's it? All right, never mind.
Yeah, $9.99. Now we have with the foil hologram sticker
Look at
instead of
that
the
shaggy.
photo.
Let's have
So
a
it's
price. Can't read it, so what does that set you back, Jeff?
$7.99.
Okay.
The hologram is cheaper than the no hologram.
Well, yes, because the no holograms were a shorter run. They went without holograms, and then Kenner's like, "We're gonna put holograms
Here's
on
some
these."
shiny.
They didn't have to. I don't think they sold any extra toys doing that. It was just an unnecessary cost.
Yeah.
And then we also get, to quote
Oh,
Jay
yeah.
Dial, freeze frame. Freeze frame, freeze frame, freeze frame. This run is called freeze frame because they came with little replicas of film cells
Yeah.
of the character from the scene in which you are watching.
Mm.
And these freeze frames, this is where we're going to actually start to see more of the toys that have retained value a little bit more.
Mm.
And the reason for that is because people are starting to realize that the collectability of Star Wars toys is falling,
Mhm. Mhm.
that their collections are starting to go. And we've talked about this with toy lines. And any of you, if you look back throughout the history of any toy line,
Mm.
the very first and the very last,
Mm.
that's where the primary money is going to come,
Mm.
right? The most value comes from the last wave when a figure is coughing its way across the finish line. Good examples for that are the glow in the dark Ghostbusters,
Right.
the slime Ghostbusters, or your like Masters of the Universe, like King Randor, Sorceress, Blade, like that run of like the final Masters, like they tend to be the ones that hold the most value because people stop buying them anymore.
Yeah.
WWF, those like green
Oh,
carded,
yeah.
the green and yellow carded ones tend to have a lot of value too because people stop buying them.
Yeah.
So this is where people are going to start to pull away, and you're going to see that the packaging is going to start coming with gimmicks. That just a toy of a character isn't going to be enough. So the freeze frames are great. And we actually get some action figures that we've kind of been waiting for here. And this is my last completionist run.
Oh, yeah.
So freeze frames are that's my last one where I'm going for 'em, and I need them. Right. And so with that one, we start with your Bespin Luke.
Right.
That's a great toy, Bespin
Yep.
Luke, whose hand you can pull off.
Mm-hmm.
Which I believe was Joseph Scrimshaw chose that as one of his favorite
Yep.
Power of the Force 2 action figures on your
That
episode.
would track.
The Endor Soldier, General Lando, Ewok Celebration Leia, as well as a group of repacks from previous ones. Then we get Wave 2. And this is actually, these are three like fan favorite releases that we get here. Because among some repacks that you're going to get, you get Biggs Darklighter, who like the 90s loved Biggs Darklighter.
Yes.
The 90s, because that was when we first got the scenes. Because there was a lot of like, remember they were like the countdown to the special editions. Because remember, this is when special editions are being released.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so you got to see like more that they would show like, here's a scene of Luke's friend Biggs as they're meeting up. And so people were like, I need more Biggs. Biggs, the pilot of 3.
Question of either of you, like Ken, for instance, I know I actually at one point had a giant size Star Wars comic. And what was interesting is the comic had like the original like script. So like I remember there was the scene with him talking to Biggs in that. And I actually remember at one point Darth Vader was like drinking a cup of coffee. But I did find it funny. The old comics did have a lot of the like deleted scenes because they hadn't been edited.
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
And they were also kind of told to go for it. I believe that was Howard Chaykin.
Oh, yeah.
That was writing those comics at the time, who's just one of my favorite curmudgeons in the comics world. Just a delightfully miserable man that I love very much. I do love him.
Mhm.
I've spent a lot of time alone with Howard, and like
Mm.
we were going to Motor City Comic Con together, and like there was a lady that was harassing me. Not harassing, but like talking me up
Mm.
at the airport, and he was laughing because she was like really annoying. She had a Star Wars hat on, and he was laughing. He was having the best time of his life. And so I looked at her and I said, "You like Star Wars?" She goes, "Yeah." I
Oh,
was like, "That guy right there, he wrote all of the comics. Go ask him about it." And I like shifted her onto him, and I was like, "That's what you get for laughing at me."
Yeah,
One of my
that's
favorite experiences.
payback.
But we got Biggs. We also got Wicket and Logray, the Ewoks, an Ewok 2-pack.
Mhm.
And we get Lax Sivrak, the Shistavanen Wolfman,
Mhm. Mhm.
which they removed out of the special
Yep.
editions and replaced him with like Neb Dabali or something like that,
Mhm.
who basically looks like a small elephant man.
Right.
And the reason for that is because Lax Sivrak is just a dude in a werewolf
It's
costume.
yeah. A lot of people give George some shit for a lot of the stuff changes, but even like the ILM team is like, yeah, that was not good.
Well, like,
rounds.
yeah,
Is
like
it?
Satan
Yeah.
Labria's there, and he just looks like the devil.
Mhm. Mhm.
So wave 3, we have Captain Piet,
Yeah.
who will eventually become Admiral Piet. And Captain Piet, there are 2 versions of Captain Piet.
Mhm.
There's one that comes with a baton
It's
and pistol, and one that comes with a rifle.
you
And the
know,
rifle is actually that one is
got promoted.
actually like surprisingly valuable.
Really?
Um, yes. We have a battle damaged Darth Vader, which is considered the greatest toy of this entire line.
Mhm. Mhm.
It is the first time we ever get to see Vader's crusty old white man head,
Right.
to quote Chasing Amy.
Hmm.
It's a battle damaged Vader. You can pull his hand off, and you can see actor Sebastian Shaw's made up, caked up, white, scabby, burnt up head.
That's
Um,
fascinating. I don't remember that one too much.
that was considered I think that was like toy of the year.
Mm.
Like people really liked that. It's also a Vader resculpt
Mhm. Mhm.
where he's not as jacked as
Yeah.
we're used to. So
Yeah.
I think is really good. Um, but so we get Piet, Vader, Ishi Tib, who's like one of the skiff
Yeah.
pilots,
Yeah.
and Zuckuss, along with a bunch of repacks. Wave 4, we get Pull Apart 3PO, which is
Mm.
so dark.
Yep. You need that.
We have R2 that has like R2 came with like a little telescoping. He had like little telescoping,
Mm.
like he had accessories instead of just a stupid little R2 anymore.
Oh yeah, I do remember.
And then a course correction of Luke and Leia,
Mhm.
the original versions of them, but now with new likenesses
Yeah.
and it's not shredded. I think Luke came with the blast shield
The Last
helmet
Shield
that
helmet.
he
Yeah.
used for training, and I believe Leia just comes with more the buns and then a more accurate sporting pistol and blaster rifle.
Yeah.
Those were corrections. Hey, sorry we made them look like an
Sorry.
ape or a bodybuilder.
Sorry, you're ugly.
That's our bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then finally we get Bush's bounty Chewbacca with an unremovable chain around his neck.
Yeah.
Base one is wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, they gave him bangs.
It is. It's a weird. Yeah, he's got the Chewie has bangs in Return of the Jedi. He wanted to fashion up for the times in 1983. That's a great. Yeah, the face is a little weird though.
I mean, that's all we could ask for, right? Though honestly, that. But we also got 3 characters that we've been waiting for in this set as well, which is Lobot, Mon Mothma, and formerly known as Pruneface, Ori Marco, who is a very important part of the rebellion, even though all we see is his face.
Yes.
He looks like a weird pirate.
Oh, totally.
He's such a fun character. And then in wave 9, we have the fan club exclusives, which were Hoth Leia, Hote Snitkin, the Death Star droid, which I think is really funny. I believe that's is it an RA7 droid or something like that?
You're talking about the mouse droid? Yeah. Yep.
Well, they came with an MSE6 mouse droid.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
there is a mouse droid, but it's
Yes,
also
you do.
it's the protocol, the Death Star
Protocol droid. Yeah,
protocol.
you're right. Yeah, the little bug eyes. Yeah.
Um, Pote Snitkin, who's Jabba's skiff pilot, as well as the AT-AT pilot. So these were that's some things that we had there. What I forgot to
Sorry,
mention. Oh
you
shit!
kind of said it like Pope Snitkin was Jabba's driver, and also on the side you picked up some gig work as an AT-AT driver.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, why not?
Galaxy's tough.
There were some gunner station pieces. There were Complete Galaxy, which were characters that came with their own little
Mm-hmm.
egg that they would live in. There was a Max Rebo band pairs
Mm-hmm.
featuring Droopy McCool, Bachwandan, Max Rebo, and Dota Bonabieto, who is the Rhodian clarinet space oboe player,
Mm-hmm.
and Sice Noodles and Joe Yauza. Now, it's brilliant because they put one original saga and one special edition character in each package to say F you to the people that were mad about Jedi.
Yeah.
There was a Princess Leia collection where they had like real clothes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't come up kind of like organically as we're going through, but one of the things I found most amusing about the design of a lot of these toys is, for any clothing thing, they would do kind of a textured plastic. By the way, apologies, Ken, if I quote you back to you, because I've watched so many Star Wars videos in the last couple of days and they like run together.
Yep.
So you might, yeah, I know I said that on my video, but definitely go check that out if you haven't. To everybody listening, I hope you all paused and went and watched Ken. And who was your co-host? I just don't want to mess up the names.
Joseph Scrimshaw. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But you two do a great job with that video. But like the clothes, when
Yeah.
you take them off, like you take off the hood and there's clothes underneath, but it also starts looking ridiculous. Like Vader's cape and Leia's cape, when you take those off, the figures underneath look so ridiculous, and it kind of He-Man, where He-Man figures would have, armor or things. And as you start taking them off, and I have some of these old toys that are just falling apart and they're just like the torso, and you're like, yeah, without all the accessories, this toy just looks
Yeah.
weird.
The Emperor's Royal Guard is just a dude in a jumpsuit.
I'm gonna say this: actual cloth clothing on Star Wars action figures is bad. It never
Hot
looks
take.
really good because
It looks a little loose and
it's always
yeah,
like,
I know
but
what you mean.
they all look like they're wearing puffer jackets.
Mhm,
With the
mhm.
Princess Leia collection, you had Leia and Han on Bespin, I believe, if
Yeah.
I recall. Then you had Leia and Luke in the ceremony on Yavin 4, Leia and R2 on Tantive 4, and Leia and
Mhm.
Wicket on Endor, right?
Yeah.
Now, we have a purchase of the droid cinema scene, so you can get your Owen Lars. You can get exclusive Cabe and Muftak, which you could only get on Hasbro Online, and Ula and Salacious Crumb. These are both 2 packs on Star Wars Insider. Now, you could get a slide viewer, so you could look at the little sides like a ViewMaster. I did forget to mention that in the green run there were exclusives, and I
Mm.
split. I mentioned the Cantina Band, but then I didn't mention the Spirit of Obi-Wan, which you could only get from Frito-Lay.
You were
I have it.
bragging about
Oh,
that to
yeah.
me today.
I still have him somewhere. I put a
Spirit
gun
of
in his hand. I thought it
Obi-Wan.
was funny, so I put like an extra blaster in his hand. You could get the Bomar Monk, which are the little brain
Yeah.
jars with a spider body walking around Jabba's palace.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the theater at the theater edition, you got a Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight, right?
Mm.
So
Mhm.
now that so we're in there, we get through there, and there's vehicles. The one that seems to be the big collectible vehicle is the AT-AT. Did
Yeah,
anybody
that's
have that?
I didn't. No. No, no, no.
It's
There's a photo of me at my like 15th birthday, or maybe
Mhm.
6th, opening and holding like a Gamorrean guard somewhere. I call him Gamorrean. What do you call him? Gamorrean or Gamorrean?
Gamorrean.
Okay. Trey,
Okay.
what about you?
You're from the East Coast.
well, I mean, I don't want to get fight here, but I will say that Princess Leia, the bounty hunter, I know I did not have that name right in my head because it was just reading. And yeah, I've now heard you and Ken say it multiple times. I'm not even going to risk it. I know I've had that
You call
wrong
it
my entire
Bush?
life.
Uh,
Now,
I ca
like bot, almost like Chris Bosch. Like in my head, it actually sounded more like
yeah,
Bosch for whatever
I
reation.
say
I say
Bausch,
Bausch.
yeah.
Or I
Yeah,
say Boosh,
yeah.
actually.
Boosh, yeah. It's a great tradition of Star Wars. As Scrimshaw says, he still to this day, when referring to that character, says "bosh bosh boosh," just to it's our inside joke to count for all
It's
versions.
actually Bosch, the uh, Amazon exclusive television show about
Yes,
an
a,
actor who
a
loves
hard
Star
boiled
Wars
detective.
and actually plays an Imperial officer in
Yeah,
Mandalorian.
yes he does. Yes he does. Titus Welliver, yeah,
We also got some pretty banging creature assortments. We got a Tusken Raider with
ton.
a hairy bantha, a Rancor with Jedi Luke that's massive and awesome. Han and Luke both with their tauntauns and a Wampa with Luke. These
Yeah,
things rocked. This was a great.
love.
This might be the best era of Power of the Force 2.
Yeah,
It might
yeah.
be.
All these mid-sized collectibles here.
We
Yeah.
take a nice detour to the expanded universe. Very
Mm,
exciting. We get some Dark Empire stuff. We have the
that's right.
clone Palpatine, the Imperial Sentinel, Leia Organa Solo,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and Luke Skywalker and flirting with the dark side Luke. We have a
mm-hmm,
Dark Trooper and Kyle Katarn from the
mm,
Dark Forces video game, which was the Doom
right.
clone, the Star Wars Doom clone, which spurned at least 2 sequels.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it did.
We had 3 Heir to the Empire books. We have the Space Trooper, Grand Admiral Thrawn, and Mara Jade.
That's right.
Finally, we get a Mara Jade, the future Mrs. Skywalker that got
In
retconned out.
another
As well
in
as an
another
air
timeline.
speeder, cloud car, and speeder bike. Those are people really liked those. That was a short run. People enjoyed
Mm-hmm.
it. And then we get to the final Power of the Force run that we're going to go through real quick, and that's what we call the Starburst, I believe. But this is
Okay.
instead of a lightsaber, we actually have like a burst design on
Mm-hmm. Right,
these.
right.
And there's just a couple. This was actually a very short run. We have a run that have flashback photos on them to
Oh
prep you
yeah, this is
for
great. Yeah.
episode 1.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. We're right there.
and you had Obi-Wan, Vader, Palpatine, Hoth Chewie, Luke, Leia in her ceremonial dress, not clothing. Mm.
Loving.
R2, Yoda, and then wave 2 had Anakin, Beru, like old Anakin, Aunt Beru, and C3PO. Right? So that's our
Yeah.
flashback ones. Instead of like a hologram or a thing, you would have the photo of the character and a little pull tab. And if you pulled the tab down, you would actually get to see a character from episode 1.
Ooh, yeah.
That was huge at
Yeah.
that point in time.
How excited we all were for episode 1. That was
Weren't
an
we though?
interesting time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Were.
did you
Oh
like
yeah.
camp out for episode 1?
I did, yeah, to get tickets, got, heat exhaustion. My roommates had to come rescue me, and then, then you had to go wait in line to get your seats because it wasn't assigned seating. Winnetka, California, Pacific Theater's 20. Absolutely.
I mean, I was lucky in that I did go out and wait. I skipped school, see
Mhm.
episode 1, but we were like really at close in line. But when we saw it a second time, um, we ended up seeing it with one of my teachers. We like met up with him and another teacher, me and my friends.
Oh, okay.
And
I
he
thought
just
maybe you
while
ditched.
there was like a big long line waiting to get tickets, and he just
Mhm.
went up to the credit card machine and bought his tickets and walked in, and the
Oh,
people
yeah,
were
yeah.
so angry. And he just like,
That's so funny.
"You
Yeah.
can do that."
That's so funny. I remember when those were put in, it was like, "What kind of future is this? I don't want that."
Oh,
That's
it
so
was
funny.
great. The first year, or like
Mhm.
when those started, my brother had a debit card, but it wasn't connected to a
Yeah.
credit account. And I
Mhm.
gotta tell you, um, here's the thing. He bought a lot of movie tickets that he never paid for because when they went to charge his account, there was no credit account. It
Yeah,
didn't
just
Track, was it a thing where it was like for a while
it
and then it
went a
stopped, or was it
couple
just like,
years because he kept looking at his bank statement waiting for a charge of a
for it
ticket
to
to
come
go
up?
through. And
That's
it
so
never
funny.
happened.
There you go.
Never.
Good for him. Good for
Not
him.
Not
Well deserved.
once.
You got heat exhaustion, Ken, but like, how do you remember after the fact? I'm sure you've talked about this before, but just like
Yeah.
all of us have, like, maybe it was good, maybe it's all right.
Yeah, yeah, I was in that boat. I was 23, so a lot of things didn't sync with me, but I liked a lot of the themes, and had some discussions with a roommate of mine who was a history major, and we were talking about
Hey,
some of the things that Lucas was pulling in. But then society kind of told you, oh, no, it was bad. But I mean, I just saw it Friday night again at El Cap. I love it. It's one of my favorite Star Wars films to watch, start to finish. It's got its warts, of course, but man, I love it. It's bonkers, wild, fun stuff. Yeah, absolutely. I came around to get. There's just a lot of things to misunderstand, and then that famous YouTube video that came out about 12 years ago that is a complete incorrect takedown of the film. It's wrong on many points. You could Qui-Gon's the main character of the film, and so what if Lucas doesn't use his 3-act structure? All that kind of stuff that famous pizza roll video put into the universe poisoned the well on the film. But I ended up loving it. But yeah, they're coming out of the theater with a ton of these figures back at my apartment. I was a little confused. Yeah, Chancellor Valorum was only in there for 2 scenes.
did you
I have 3 Terrence Stamp figures.
did you ever hear about how like he took that specifically because he wanted to work with Natalie Portman? Because he
That went around? Yeah,
and
that
then
went
he
around. Yeah.
got there and he's just like, it's just me and a green screen.
Yep. Yep.
He's like, I've
Yep.
never
I
been
heard that.
more disappointed acting
Mhm.
gig
Yep.
than showing
Yeah.
up
No, there's a lot of
very
that.
excited. It's funny. I like it. Like I left episode 1. I was still, I was 17, 16,
Mhm.
17 at the time, 99. Yeah, I was 17. I left and I was like, that was awesome. And then the second time I saw it, I was like, "Ah,
Yeah.
I may have jumped the gun on how much I think this movie is awesome.
Yeah.
I was like, now that I'm not, because it was really spectacle. Like, when did you
Oh, big
did you
spectacle.
see it on release, Trey?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. My story is a friend of mine got like advance tickets at a theater. And so we had like an interesting moment where we were going to go see it. And someone's like, I'd like to go see it. And like, well, you could have bought advance tickets. And girl just like gave me such a look, but it was one of the happier moments. But yeah,
Yeah.
and I saw it a couple times because I had a younger brother. So it was one of those where I don't know, it was weird because I think I knew it wasn't good, but I still liked it enough. But then I think that's like right when I kind of just left Star Wars.
Mhm.
Cause I mean,
Yeah.
as Jeff well knows, I thought the Ewok movies were good. That was part of my childhood because that's all we had.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
my Ewok movies, that was viewed by 60 million people and won a daytime Emmy. So, or an
Yeah.
Emmy
Yeah.
of some
Yeah.
sort.
Yeah.
So like it was well liked. So I had that low bar. And then I was like, maybe it's more. And then, man, although like the superhero, like Spider-Man as an example,
Mhm.
coming out in the near future, X-Men, you're just like, oh, this is what the future can hold. It was
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of a weird.
Matrix that year too. All that
Yeah.
stuff.
Big time.
Cinema change.
Big times at
Yeah.
that point in time. One of the things that episode 1 did that Power of the Force absorbed was the Comtech chip. There,
That's right.
you would get a little voice chip. You would get a giant version of the Gillette razor
Mhm.
communicator. I don't know if you remember episode 1. They literally the Jedi communicator is just
Yep.
a chick intuition razor or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
And they
Yep.
give you a big version of that, and you would put your com chip on it, and it would talk. We have Greedo, Han, and this is, I believe, the Han is like another version of him,
Mhm.
just doing his thing, having a good time. Then we get
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
A Jawa with a Gonk droid, which I
Mm.
believe would be EG6. I believe.
Mhm.
And then
Mm.
Luke Skywalker with his little Skyhopper, T-16 Skyhopper
Yeah.
model, which everybody absolutely loves that. Nobody.
Yeah, it's a great figure.
Vader with the ITO droid, R2
Mhm.
with a little holographic Princess Leia, a stormtrooper,
Oh,
and then
oh, that's
finally wave
great.
3 we get Mahdi, and he's getting choked,
Joke.
which is just so
It's great.
good. And then a
Mhm.
Leia with hood on. And that's
Right.
it. That's the last of that. Now, among there, we have some cinema scenes, Cantina Aliens, where we get Labria, Nabran Leeds, and Tequil. Jabba's Skip Guards, Barada, Klaatu, and Nikto. Hey, Klaatu, Barada, Nikto. Hey, you get it. You get a Jedi spirits, Spirit of Obi-Wan, Spirit of Anakin,
Right.
Spirit of Yoda. Rebel pilots, Ten Num, Wedge Antilles, and Arvel Crinid. We get
Recorded.
2 episode 1 exclusives you could mail away for a Mace Windu, or you could get the Stap and Battle Droid sneak preview. That was the first episode 1 toy to be released in stores. Was the Battle Droid on a Stap, and then the Star Wars fan club, you could get Woo Her, the Cantina bartender. Famously absent from this run is Boshek, who's the that turns Luke and Obi-Wan to over to Han and Chewie. Admiral Ozzel is absent, and Moff Jerjerrod. Those, in my opinion, my 3 characters that I was like, you didn't want to put them in at all. Moff Jerjerrod is the guy who's in charge of the Death Star in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. The Emperor's coming here?
We will double our efforts.
Okay. I hope so, Commander, for your sake. For the Emperor is not as forgiving as I am.
There were some like really kind of crusty dioramas as well. It was the Mos Eisley Cantina with a sand trooper and a patrol droid that it came with, and there was Jabba's palace with Han Solo melting out of the carbonite.
That's right. Yeah. Disturbing.
Yeah. But yes, I don't know if you know this, but we have sponsors. We have producers of the show. Dre, you got some producers for me?
So following Jeff over from the Jeff Has Cool Friends producers, we have the Enchanted Wandering Unpierced Left Nipple Ciders room temperature. I've had issues with pronunciation on that before, Ken, and Jeff has a lot of nipple producers, and they followed him here. They know where he lives. There we go. We have Norm from Cheers. Shout out to Norm. We have Bimmy and Jimmy Out Fighting Crime, Double Dragon, greatest Robert Patrick movie there is.
No.
I missed out meeting Robert Patrick at a Comic-Con. It was the only conflict weekend, but I wanted to go so bad and get like a Double Dragon thing for Jeff. Just hearts. But anyway, Mike Slick.com fucking up search results for the right-wing radio host that shares my name since 2007.
All right, we're going to give a big shout out to I'm going to start calling Yoda Old Grogu just to see what happens. Shout out to Burrito. Shout out to Ricky Cilantro. Shout out to Dan's Ninja Turtle Ooze, former guest of the show. And finally, Porcelain Jesus. Shout out to Porcelain Jesus. Pray to you all the time. On top of that, if you want to be a member of this, head on over to patreon.com/Jeff May. We have nerd producer tiers. We have a lot of tiers. There's so many different ways you can get in, but you can produce this and Jeff Has Cool Friends. You can produce this and get stuff in the mail. You don't even have to produce this, but you can check that out. Patreon.com/Jeff May. So Power of the Force is done. It's over in 2000. 5 years. That is the average run of a good toy line. Right? A good toy line lasts 5 years. If you look historically, like there are some aberrations. I think G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, is probably the most successful of full long runs because that lasted about 10 years. Where Transformers did not last as long in a continued existence. It kind of like pulled back and stuff. So we're done with that run. So now let's talk about like personal experiences specifically. Ken, do you have a favorite? Like, what's your number one? I know you did the video, but like, what's the one? Like, if somebody was going to be like, you could have one Power of the Force 2 action figure, which one would it be?
There's the Luke, ceremonial Luke one is on my list. I was a big fan of Tarkin, but the one I do have it. They're in a not in box. They're in plastic bags wrapped up, not for resale. The quality's probably down. I am a big fan of the Biker Scouts, and that 1995 Biker Scout with the speeder. Like, I didn't have that in the original Kenner line, the Biker Scout and speeder they released, and so for me to get a chance to get it, I remember I bought 2, and I felt, oh, what a dream come true. I love that one. So, and I think it explodes.
Yeah.
Speaking of gruesome deaths and Return of the Jedi,
I think it might. Yeah, and I remember because that was surprisingly affordable at the time. I think it was only $9.99 for the
Yep.
the speeder bike. I remember I had that too. I loved how the toy was useless off of the speeder bike.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
he
yeah,
would
yeah,
be
yeah.
like making like like it's like he's making like he's pretending to be a bear. He's in like a
Yeah,
squat and everything like that. But yeah, that was a good one.
yeah.
Um I if we're talking toys, it might be that battle damaged Vader.
It's a g I did look it up. You jogged my memory on it. That's a great one too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it might be that. Dre, what about you?
I'm really curious, by the way, on the battle damaged Vader about finding it on card. Because when you were saying, like,
Not hard.
most of these you can find.
These
I,
are the easiest toys to find on card.
Mhm.
I'm just saying, I'm just looking through and trying to find, because they did like a 30th anniversary. So it may be the case that they're actually just getting bogged down by SEO as opposed to, because yeah, it is funny looking up some of these figures like, oh, you can find this figure for 10.99 or whatever. Um, Things that I never got from this series that I would love when you're like favorite, it would be so cool to get like the Millennium Falcon or the AT-AT, because I think even younger, like younger, when you ask you're like, oh, for Christmas I'll ask for this big thing, like the Death Star, and you hope you're not going to get it. I think all of us are in a similar level of childhood where we weren't the kids that got
Yeah,
the giant.
yeah.
We had friends, we weren't those people, so that's cool. And then by the time I got to high school, money went to other stuff like video games. So
Mhm.
it's that window of like having a little disposable income where I would actually spend it
Yeah.
on like a toy, like the Millennium Falcon itself would be a really cool one. And then my like personal interaction with these that was more funny, like I said, I worked at Target, so I had kind of grown out of buying the action figures at this point, had gotten more into the card game. Jeff, you and I both did that. Got into video games a ton. Hopefully that'll be a future season of Nerd. I'm thinking like video games like PlayStation ones. Um, Funny story though that I remember for all the toy collectors out there is there was on Sunday mornings you'd have the toy collectors come in to look for toys,
Mhm.
and all of them had this conspiracy theory that there were people at Target going into like the case breaks, as you're saying, breaking into the
That
cases
does
and
happen.
stealing them. And here's the story. 100% accurate. So it was hilarious because you have these like adult man children, usually
Ooh.
absolute apes about toys. And we're like, they're stealing the Hot Wheels, they're stealing the toys. And you're like, calm down, sir. Then you're like, yeah, I work with that guy. It's pretty cool. Out to get a GameCube with the guy that used to
I
live at
That's
one of my.
amazing.
may have done that. Not with Star Wars, with Marvel Legends. I got a job at Toys R Us, not specifically to get access to Marvel Legends, but I got a job at Toys R Us around 2004, winter, like Christmas, 2004, 2005. And I I worked in the R zone, the video game section, and I realized that like I knew people that were stocking the quote boy toys, the action figures. And I was like, "Hey, let me know when you're doing Marvel Legends. There's a couple of them I need." And they were just like, "Okay, yeah, we did it." And so I got the Marvel Legends Deadpool that came with dupe, bought that for $8, flipped it for 120 a couple
Nice,
years later. It was all
nice.
right.
It's you gotta yeah. You gotta know those managers, man. But I don't know if you know comedian Mike Black. He's a big toy guy, and he's always like, "Oh, I know the manager at that Walgreens in Encino. I go to the Rite Aid over there. I talk to that manager. She's got a
Getting
Rolodex."
pills. Like I got so
Yeah.
much pills.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, it is definitely one of those sort of things. So historically,
Mm.
when I moved out of my mom's house when I was 22, because I was going to school, I graduated and got my teaching job, and I had to move. The story behind it is I taught in my hometown, and two
Mm.
young women knew that I lived in this house, and they came to say hi to eighth grade girls, and my mom let them in the house. And
Oh,
so I was like, I need to move.
Mm.
So I moved. Um, my mom took that so personally. Like my mom wanted me to be a teacher that lives at home with his mom. And so she was like, "All right, well, take everything. You have to take everything."
Mm.
And I was like, "Can I leave some stuff here in this big house that we have here?" Mom's like, "Nope, you're gone, you're gone." So I ended
Hmm.
up having to take my Star Wars toys with me, my Power of the Force collection, and I had storage and I had moved and when I moved to a place that didn't have storage, I had to sell them. My mom would not let me bring
Mhm.
them back.
That's
I
fair.
sold them at the most bottom of the market you could possibly sell them at.
Mm.
I sold everything. Play sets, action figures themselves, the red carded that were supposed to be green carded, the vehicles, a Millennium Falcon. I sold
Mm.
the entire
Mm.
set for like $200 maybe.
Yeah.
And as a
Oh, wow.
polite nod, the store I sold it to, That's Entertainment, which I worked at, they put
Oh
them all
yeah.
out on a table and they said, "From the Jeff May collection," which I thought was very, whatever. But they made their money back real quick. And if I had held on to them for a little bit longer, they like Star Powers of the Force action figures rebounded a little bit.
Mm.
In the mid to late 2000 aughts, they were
Mm.
worthless.
Yeah.
They became worthless.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a reminder. Ken, you said you held on to them all?
I do have a lot of them. It's funny. It's on my agenda this week to go in my storage shed and pull that out. I don't have the full collections, and a lot of them were pulled out of the packages. But yeah, there was also a weird. I moved to LA in 1998 and didn't carry a lot of things with me, but eventually got them back. So I don't know. I have to track down some of my Power of the Force ones, what happened. But there was my day job years ago. A collectible store opened up, like an independently run. There was I think it's called Halo 2. There's one in the Burbank Mall, one in the Northridge Mall, and I was in the Northridge Mall. And I became friends with that staff there. And that kind of I was surprised because I've been kind of disconnected a little bit from the nerd world, but I was just starting in some digital media stuff. And they had all the Power of the Force figures, Power Force 2 figures. And it was such a fun, nostalgic
Right.
blast, even then, right?
Some would say a blast from the past.
Some would say.
Which
Eh,
blast from the past, shout out to them for loaning me uh
Yeah,
six six
that's great.
action
They trust
figures,
you.
three versions of two characters. Um,
Never seen that much trust given to a stand-up comic before.
well, they know how to find me. If I It's one of those things too, like looking at it because they're going to then turn immediately to Power of the Jedi. They know that Power of the Force is starting to die out, and they're
Right,
like, "What are we going to do? We'll
right.
just make Power of the Jedi." And Power of the Jedi is the spiritual continuation of Power of the Force, but
Yeah,
they have better molding, better scenario. They're just like, "We're going to make them a little better," and these Star Wars freaks are
yeah,
going to eat them all up, and they did. Uh,
they did.
Star Wars fans collect. They accept, they move on,
Mhm.
and they keep buying things. Like Kenner and Hasbro are smart to do that. I believe the difference being that Power of the Jedi was a Hasbro labeled toy line,
Yeah, oh yeah,
whereas
it started to change.
even though Hasbro was producing them, Power of the Force was Kenner. So it
Mhm.
was really they're just being like, "Look, we're Hasbro. Why are we pretending we're not? Like,
Right,
let's just do
right.
this."
Indeed.
Is there an obscure character? Like, I know that you have, like, a favorite, right? But, like, let's get
Mm,
outside of the regular mains.
mm.
What obscure character action figure do we want? Like, what's the one that we wanna hold on to?
From this that's actually
Any
out there or that we
weirdo
need
character.
it?
Yeah, give me a
That
Wish character that you would want in this
Sure.
line, and then any of the ones that's not like a what you'd consider a main character. Like, for me, the
Yeah, I've
IG-88, right? IG-88 is
yeah,
my one more obscure character
you got it, yeah.
onto, which unfortunately, he's only carded with Boba Fett.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, in terms of, characters that I'd like to see from any era, any Wish, but in the Power of the Force design, give me, give me Jira, who's the older lady that tells Anakin, storms a coming, Annie, whatever the exact line is from Phantom Menace. But I would like to see the buffed character version of her.
It's like a shredded, old, wrinkled one. I'm in.
Oh, my bones are aching, Annie.
Bet her go, Annie. Yeah,
Yeah.
she looked like an Apple doll. They made her up really wrinkly.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd like to see her in the Powerful Force too. As far as the ones that are out there, man, I have a weird affinity for Imperial officers.
Really?
I don't go for their causes. I'm a big Moff Gerad fan, so I have a lot of versions of his characters. I think I even got one near me. Yeah. Oh, look at visual aid. I got I got this recently sent
You
to
got
me.
the saga continues. Is that
The
that one?
saga
Yeah.
continued, the saga collection. So I would have liked to seen him in that line too, but like a Piet, Captain Piet with
We never got
with a
an
stick
admiral
and a
yet.
and never got an Admiral Piet. That'd be kind of cool. That'd be kind of cool. I think we needed more rebels. We needed some background Mon Calamari.
We didn't get
Uh
Hobby as well.
we didn't get Hobby. Yep.
Um,
Was a wedge eventually
we
came,
got a
right?
wedge. I believe we did get
Yeah.
a wedge Antilles, but
Or you know what? I think he does show up later. Never mind. But like Garvin Dave Drace, who is Red Leader.
yeah,
And factors into one of my signature stand-up bits. Garvin Dave Drace at any point, any line, I'll take Garvin Dave.
Garvin Drace, who is, I believe that's the numbered card I pulled out of my Topps black box.
Get out of here! That's so funny.
We got the Garvin and who was the Talia Dearth or Tala Dearth was my grab on that.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Wilro Hood would have been a good one to have. He's the
Yeah,
ice cream maker runner on Bespin.
Yeah. I mean, I know he shows up eventually, but this would have been the line to do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's just really Power of the Force 2 more than we had ever seen before, because Star Wars, the original Power of the Force and the original toy lines, they were very good at like, oh, here's a man, his name is Walrus Face. Whatever. Like they just like threw random shit out and it didn't matter.
Yeah.
This was the most shameless we had seen the toy lines really coming out in ways that we had never seen before. They would re-release a character or do like a different costume change for main characters, but like not like this. And Power of the Force 2, in summary, and let me know if you agree with this or not, but Power of the Force 2 is the height of decadence and hubris. It's its own Death Star of Star Wars collectibles.
Counter to you, Jeff. Sorry, this is a probably not aware of this. There's an ongoing kind of like feud with Jeff and I, like other argument, which is GI Joe versus Lego. I fall on the Lego side. Jeff falls on the GI Joe side. And what I kind of do to be the pedant that I am is to basically say that Jeff really is a Lego master. He just does it with story. When you listen to Jeff talk about how he played with GI Joes, he was basically, in my view, and even with like Star Wars CCG, he was, in my view, doing like Lego build. He was building stories. He was building narratives. Jeff is really, as I mentioned, Jeff off the top of his dome made up the Wilford Brimley backstory. By the way, that was my figure, by the way.
Jeff. Wilford
I want to know a character. I don't nor want a Wilford Brimley character. And I would love, similar to you with IG-88, obviously Wicket is my favorite. I would love a Wicket on card, but he only comes in two pack
Hey, Ken,
ones.
Wait, real quick. Ken, did I give you a Wicket as a housewarming gift?
You gave me a low gray from the
Hearted low gray from the original Return of the Jedi run.
But 1983
but Ed, I was so jealous. I did hear this on a podcast that you did years ago, but I heard recently. You have a life-size Wicket doll, right?
I do. Yeah, from a brother and sister team called Treon and Emerald Moon Treon Indoor. They make droids and Ewoks. They gave me a Wicket.
That is, Wicket. The Wicket would be my fan, and then Wilford Brimley would be the figure I would like, because that does not exist. Wilford Brimley with like action carabiners and walking stick. But yeah, Jeff, I argue you're like a Lego builder with this. And so that's kind of the coolness of the Power of the Force to me, is that we're like, these shameless plug giving you this background character that's on the scene for two things. But it's like, it literally gave Star Wars fans the complete Lego set to do whatever story they want. Weird backstory. Jeff can just be like, oh yeah, that stormtrooper that showed up for 2 seconds in the cantina with this alien who's really a bounty hunter that I learned about in the EU.
Yeah,
here's a
play. This is play for children. Yeah.
I'm saying that's cool.
I don't have to build anything.
I actually,
the effort is maxed out at opening the card and putting the weapons in their hands. I'm not reading an instruction manual to figure out how to build something. I don't have the time for that. I'm a child.
Doing the same, like that's the trick though, is they're letting you. I mean, you did read the instruction manual, right? You don't realize it. You watched the movies, you read the books, you read the behind the scenes stuff. You did it supplementary, whereas like the Lego people, they just have it handed to us.
No.
I'm a big Lego fan, so but I did that too. I built the Legos and my minifigs had names and stories I picked up from week to week as a kid. I love that. But I did that with G.I. Joe stuff too. I had an ongoing thing where Destro was cheating on Baroness with Zorana, and like, oh, it was a thing, man. It was a thing.
You just did like straight up soap
Yeah.
opera shit.
Yep. Yep. It was a problem.
Um, you know, in 1995 is, I think, the year of Lucasian hubris. More
Mhm.
than we've ever seen before, because when you look at 1995, we see the power of the Force 2, right? But what we
Mhm.
also have is the special editions are being announced that they're moving forward, right? George is like, "Oh, they're not done. I'm not done."
Mhm.
Um, from there, we also get the Star Wars customizable card game, which we have already done an episode of
Mhm.
Nerd about, right? So, like, Star Wars is coming back in a big, huge way. And through whatever fault of people involved, we have ebbs, we have flows, we have the collectability
Mhm.
aspect of it, we have the demands that are being made, the oversaturation of the market, you have other companies getting involved. That this is a golden age, but also a bit of a wonderful junk era of Star Wars, sort of like when we think about like baseball cards in the 80s and
Mhm.
90s, we call it the junk wax era. This is sort
Yeah,
of
yeah.
like the junk wax era of Star Wars, but not in
Mhm.
a cataclysmic way the way it was for trading cards.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, this line, not to wax poetic about the line, you're talking about 1995, and I think it's maybe easy to overlook if you weren't there, man, about the magic of this coming back. Like Star Wars was real. Yes, you had the Zahn stuff, uh, video games, without a doubt. I read those too, and that was part of fun. And the Zahn books did a lot of heavy lifting in the early '90s, without a
Yeah.
doubt. But this was like back. It was back, man. I was in college, and I always talk about this. There was the dark days of Star Wars. It had gone. Nothing real. The movies, no
Yeah, I do a whole
talk
bit
of
about
movies or
that,
shows.
about how, like,
Yeah.
you know, it would be like having a friend who was really into the Matrix right now. No, that's how
Yeah,
I explain it. Like
it
being
was.
into Star Wars in 1993 is like,
I always point to Clerks and that scene of them just kinda shooting the shit over, contractors on the Death Star and blah, 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 blah. That was huge. I was, in a college studying screenwriting and film, and that movie coming out was like, "Oh my god, an adult put a Star Wars reference into a movie that isn't Spaceballs?" Like, it was huge, and this was part of it. The fact that I could now go to Toys R Us in Santa Maria, California, near my college, and go find new Star Wars figures. Oh, it was so cool. That's the power I take from this line. The power
power
of
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 the
the Force,
Force.
if you will.
Well, on that note, Dre, do we have anything? Or
Like I
Yeah.
said, not even conspiracy theory. This is in the toys that made us as a throwaway line. This is what brought the movies back.
Mhm, mhm,
Without this line, without George Lucas getting 18% of every dollar sold on this line, and us fans just marking out and wanting every damn character. Jeff buying, what was it, 5 or 6
Ah,
sets, right, Jeff?
so many.
mm,
You know
so
what's
many,
funny
So
is
so
many.
what
many.
I didn't plan for was how long just naming off what came out was.
That's so
It's so
much.
much more dense than I remember it being, which is, like,
Mhm,
insane to me. Like, when I went through there, I'm like,
mhm,
"Man, this is taking a while." But I think it was important to discuss how much they crammed into what is essentially a 4-year period. We
mhm,
say
mhm,
that it's, 1995 to 2000, but realistically speaking, if you look at what was released in
mhm.
2000, there's not much. It's mostly 95
Yeah,
that
yeah,
they
yeah.
crammed so, like, I can't think of any other toy line that did this much in such a short time.
Constant. It keeps
Yeah,
going, keeps going, keeps going.
nothing, no toy line in my off the cuff memory has produced so much in such a short time as Power of the Force 2 did.
Yeah. It's a powerhouse
All right.
line for a reason.
I can actually with my nerdy like love of history and stuff. So like 1997 is this perfect range. I'm going to bring up the Chicago Bulls and I'm going to bring up like the attitude era of wrestling. There are these things because you're saying like consistent release. There are new toy lines that release new stuff all the time. There was never and will never be a point in time where as many toys that were mainstream and bought at the level they were will ever match 97. We're never going to see the ratings that the 97 Bulls got.
Mm.
We're never going to see it like the 97 Power of the Force. We're never going to see another era in wrestling like the Attitude Era in the mid-90s. And it's wild. They're the same time. 1997, it's like peak nerd. It will never be bigger than this, more wide stream and
We
popular
hit the
and good.
apex, and I think that's important. I think Power of the Force 2, this is not, you can't say Power of the Force 2 doesn't happen again. Like Power of the Force 2, like it could never be done because we get Power of the Jedi and then we get the saga continues.
Mhm.
And we had Power of the Force 1. But there's something about Power of the Force 2 that was this perfect storm of collectible. Because Power of the Jedi, if you see, they dip out. Collectors dip
Totally.
Power
Yeah.
of the Jedi. And a lot of that does have to do with the fact that, I'm sorry, but they got burned on Power of the Force too. Like their toys are now worthless. And so they were like, well,
Yeah,
I'm going to buy
yep.
3 of these now. I've learned my lesson, you know, and like I said in the
Yeah.
beginning, I learned my lesson with the last time about selling them. Now people are saying, well, I learned my lesson in the last time with buying them. When you look at episode 1 Fever and you see people carrying just bundles and bundles of toys that will turn out to be the most worthless collectibles. Not saying they're not worthless toys, but they're worthless collectibles. That Power of the Force 2 was that real golden age of Star Wars toys being both toys, collectibles, and just all around a phenomenon. And Dre, circling back to what you said, yeah, 1997 is really that apex. Nailed it. Ken,
Nailed. Yeah, buddy.
what do you, people are listening. Where do we learn more? Where do we go? What do we want from you? What do we get from you? How do we get your book?
Right now, you can get it wherever you get your books. Audio version is great because I do the voice on it and got to correct some mistakes that made it into the book, as I always say. So it's kind of it's the re-release. It's the Luke with different color hair that I recommend. But you can get the book wherever you buy your books. You can go to my website, kennapzok.com, for links of all my shows and everything like that. But check out Force Center. Me, Joseph Scrimshaw, Jennifer Landa. We do about 3-4 episodes a week on YouTube and podcast form. Diving deep into Star Wars themes and also the fun stuff like this. This is what we love discussing.
We certainly do. Definitely check out Ken's episode of Jeff Has Cool Friends, which you can find on this network. Wherever you are listening to this, you can just go right back and listen to it. It's really great, where you can learn more about Ken and his relationship with Star Wars. More than just me rattling off the names of a bunch of toys and characters. But really a deep dive on that. I would definitely check that out. Trey, what else you got going on?
All right. So for me, find me most places as Nerd Numbers, chess.com. If you want to play me chess, I got a brief high recently, back down below 1800, but was above 1800
Is
for
that
a
like
little bit.
global rank?
Well, like I'm ranked like top 98% of the millions of people that play on chess.com, which means I would still get shellacked by any half decent chess player, but I'm still proud of it. It's still good. Yeah, the Box Score Geek show, we're on hiatus for a little bit right now, but that goes bi-weekly, the Box Score Geek show, wherever shows are found. I am most proud of this, which means I really want you to support the Patreon for Jeff. So Jeff,
well, if you head on over to patreon.com/Jeff May, you can get so many wonderful experiences on there. You can get early access to uncensored episodes of shows like Jeff Has Cool Friends, as well as Nerd. That's the show you're listening to. You want to get it a little bit earlier? Head on over to patreon.com/Jeff May. You can also get cards in the mail. I can send you stuff. Who knows? Ken and I are going to open stuff and we'll send it. I also have these really fun old original stickers from Star Wars that I thought about getting graded. I sent a Vader in to see what it would come back as, and it came back like a 5. And I was like, I shouldn't send these in. But I have all these really beautiful 77 stickers. I should show them on an episode of I Must Break You. But you can also check out Tom and Jeff Watch Batman on the Gamefully Unemployed Network, as well as all the stuff I do with Adam Todd Brown on the You Don't Even Like Podcasts Network. My YouTube is at Hey There Jeffro. Definitely check that out, because I do I Must Break You every Wednesday at 1:00. And if you missed that yesterday, go back and look at it, because Ken Napzok joined me, hopefully. Also, check out Ken Napzok's Sports Card ASMR channel. It's so fun and so good, and I really wish you would.
Check it out, man. Make my dreams come true. Make that a channel that grows and grows.
And Mint on Card is the second Friday of every month at Blast from the Past in beautiful Magnolia in Burbank, California. Our next show is going to be in June. June 14th will be our next show. Our last show was on May 10th. Ken, we got to have you back on there.
Hey, Dre from the future. You may recognize me from the intro commercial or, from this show. Just had to break the fourth wall to share some cool news. As if Jeff had sensed a great disturbance in the force, he actually did need someone to fill in on the May 10th show. And Ken, just like Han Solo, showed up at the nick of time and was at Blast from the Past at the Mint on Card show. Huge shout out again to Blast from the Past for lending Jeff some action figures for the show. This audio-only medium that we are releasing to you, but Ken and I got a lot of enjoyment out of them. And to be the pedant that I am, Jeff kind of keeps a kayfabe when he records shows. He records the show as if it is the day of recording. So if we are pretending that this show is released May 16th, then the Blast from the Past show just happened, and on said show, Jeff is telling Ken he has to be back on the Mint on Card show, even though, as you just learned, he was on the May 10th show. So let Jeff know in the comments that, yes, we're gonna keep in universe. We're going to keep kayfabe. Ken belongs back on the Mint on Card show. Thanks again to Blast from the Past and Ken.
All right. Well, now's our time to finish it. Everybody say goodbye to the people.
Bye, people. Goodbye.
Bye, people. Thanks for listening to Nerd. If you want to help keep the podcast growing, it's definitely worth your while to head over to patreon.com/Jeff May. And also, you'll get bonuses and early access to cool stuff. Cool stuff like videos of Jeff showing off awesome collectibles and doing pack-breaking videos. It'd be worth your while to check out Jeff May's YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@HeyThereJeffro. That's spelled JEFFRO. And shocker, that is also his Twitter and Instagram account as well. So follow Jeff everywhere. You can find me most places on the internet as @NerdNumbers. Also, shout out to Chris Haugen for the outro theme of Pure Magic. Thanks so much, and we'll be back with another nerdy subject soon.